quarterbacks are really tough. And I think that there's a lot of bullshit out there that like people know. People don't know. I mean, they really don't. If you look on the number of quarterbacks that are taken in the top 5, top 10, I'm sure somebody has this information out there somewhere, but like it's more often than not, they're huge misses.
Oh, dude, I saw a great
They don't get it
stat.
right. They don't get it right. The people who are paid to do this, who spend more time than anyone in the world doing this, consistently get it wrong. I mean, it's in there in black and white. So it's kind of hilarious. And if you think about our whole mission and what we do here, what, like what scouts do, and it's
of which you were.
I mean, I don't know about that. I work for a football
for
scouts.
Scouting Network.
Yeah, I did for sure. But it's just a lot of stuff being thrown up against the wall. And I think the key is to having a successful NFL organization is having an identity, knowing who you are, and building your team around that identity. And I think that will get you to where you want to go.
Dude, I cannot find the stat. It's really bugging me.
I think that's why, like, sometimes when I'm asking people, like if I talk to Mosley, hey, what do you think the Cowboys' identity is? I always try to figure out like who these teams think they are, because a lot of times I think they truly don't know who they are and what they are. And you see it a lot of times in who they draft. You often see a team driving a round peg into a square hole, and it doesn't work out.
I can't find the tweet. It was like about all of these quarterbacks taken in the first round the last 20 years. And here is the portion, like the percentage of them who have been benched at some point during their first 2 or 3 seasons. And it said one of them of the 25 that had been benched in their first 2 seasons, only one of them had come back and either made a Pro Bowl or won a playoff game, because they were talking about it for Anthony Richardson. Any idea who that one guy was?
Do you know?
Yeah.
So a guy who had been benched and came back to win a playoff game.
Or make the Pro Bowl.
Oh, a quarterback. In how many years? How many years?
20 years. This is a really tough thing to throw at you. I wouldn't unless we had just been talking about this person.
And we were just talking about it?
Yeah.
I don't know. Who is it? I'm brain farting right now.
Double doink.
Trubisky.
Game. Mitch Trubisky. Yeah.
Oh,
he's the only one.
Really?
Yeah. Which, I don't know, feels odd because some of these guys have had their renaissance and whatever.
Yeah.
Like a Baker Mayfield or Sam Darnold. I don't know when they were benched, so maybe it was just past the time frame. But like, Darnold hasn't won a playoff game. I think Baker's won like 1, 2.
I mean, look what's going on with
it's just funny that Mitch
Young.
Is the one because he did not have a renaissance. You know what I mean? Like, kind of. That 18 season was good, but but they fell right away.
It's so rare that these guys get put on the shelf and bounce back and have big careers. Like, that's why we talk about it when they do. That's why, like, Jim Plunkett is a guy who,
what a resurrection.
I mean, he was drafted by your Patriots.
Yeah.
And,
much like a situation that Drake May's in right now. No offensive line, no head coach, no front office, just letting them get killed out there.
And I think that's an issue in itself.
My dad saw all of Jim Plunkett's games.
He did?
Yeah, when they got season tickets was when they moved to Foxborough, which was 71, which is the year they drafted Plunkett number 1. And he was like, I just felt so bad for the guy. Just watching him get pummeled week after week after week. Yeah. And he gets labeled a bust because of it. He goes to Oakland and pretty good player. Not a Hall of Famer, but pretty good player. Wins a Super Bowl.
He won 2 Super Bowls, Cam.
2? Okay. And I thought it was just the 1. But yeah, pretty good player, man.
I think he should be in the Hall of Fame. Tom Flores got in. Plunkett's going to get in.
Tom Flores had a better resume than Tony Dungy.
He won 2 Super Bowls.
I know.
Like,
Tony won 1 kind of by mistake. We drag Mike McCarthy through the mud, as we should.
Yeah.
Of kind of winning 1 by mistake. Tony Dungy was the same way, dude. They both had generational quarterbacks.
Well,
like some of the best quarterbacks ever. and they made all these conference championship games, and they had a bunch of one and dones in there. At one point, Brady ended up surpassing this number, but in like 15 or 16, Brady had more or had as many playoff losses as Peyton Manning had one and dones. That's unthinkable that he was that much better than the next best quarterback. I don't know. So that partially goes to Tony Dungy as well. I don't know.
Well, it does. And the same thing happened to Dungy in Tampa.
But Dungy, elite commentator.
Are you joking or serious?
One of one analyst.
Okay. So Tony Dungy, I think Mike McCarthy. If Mike McCarthy was retired, we would speak differently of him.
Correct.
It's just the way it goes, dude. I mean,
once you go to another place, George Seifert, man, coached himself out of the Hall of Fame with that Carolina tenure.
Yeah, that was the Ray Caruth times. That was bad, man.
Yeah,
that was rough. He really never had much of a shot. That team went left. They had two guys. There was another guy, Fred Lane, who got killed by his girlfriend. Around the same time.
Really?
Yeah, it got really dark there for a little bit. Fred Lane was pretty good too. It was a bummer for Seifert how that happened. But again, another guy who you won almost by accident, right?
Yeah. Yeah, probably. That's how we look back on it.
But back
instead of like, wow, how did he fill in Bill Walsh's shoes and actually won a Super Bowl? Like it would be like if Steve Young played 3 more years with the Jets and they were just awful, it'd be like, oh, well, maybe we were kind of wrong about this guy.
Well, there's a philosophical argument too about the quarterbacks before I lose this thought.
Yes.
Okay, let's boil it down to Baylor. Jake Spavital takes over, right? So everybody's excited because they're like, he runs that wide open air raid offense or whatever you want to call it, 5 wide, no backfield most of the time or sometimes. But that's what Texas high school quarterbacks run. That's what really all quarterbacks are running now in high school.
Shotgun, spread formation. Yep.
So you can plug them right in, okay? And we're seeing that more in the NFL. Like these systems aren't as foreign to these young guys as they matriculate and get drafted maybe in the top 10 into the NFL.
I think Mahomes is the first one of those, really.
Yeah, and you want to talk about a one-on-one. Like I think that was fool's gold for a lot of front office people to think that we can do this with someone else. He's just magical and special. But now, so we have this streamline of systems that kind of go through high school, college, and the NFL that's not necessarily a foreign language to these guys. It's a first language. And these quarterbacks get into the NFL and they get, hey, we're spending a lot of money. They should know the offense. We're going to play them right away. And it's to their detriment, I think, 80% of the time.
Like Caleb Williams?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, man. It's hard. It's not like basketball. Like when you say, you got to start the rookie because let's let him get reps. It's 82 games. Like football, you're the quarterback.
You can hide them a little bit in basketball too.
What's that?
You can hide them a little bit in basketball too.
Yeah, football, you're the quarterback. There's no more important. I mean, it's just dude, it's a lot. It's a lot for a young guy to take on. And I think with the NFL changing and the amount of pressure changing, it's just so much different now for the quarterback of the organization, and I don't say of the team, I say of the organization because that's the front porch,
Who do you think of this draft? Because I was just thinking about the Mahomes aspect, and I got to admit, I was wrong about Mahomes.
Yeah.
Not that anybody was listening to me as a sophomore in college, but I was like, man, and I liked Mahomes in college, I obviously saw him play a lot. He was a ton of fun. And I was like, but when has this worked?
Yeah.
When has this offense worked in the NFL? I mean, really, you look at all the Hal Mummy guys that did not work. Tim Couch, chief among them. Poor Tim Couch, man. He played a while. Like he was their starter for a while. And in Cleveland.
Yeah, Chris Palmer was their coach. He went into probably one of the worst situations you could go into. That was the Browns, but they were expansion Browns, and they sucked, man.
So I was like, dude, this is not going to work. Like, this is just not going to work. I think it's worked. I think the Mahomes thing has worked. I think I'm okay to return that verdict. I think it's worked. So I was thinking about that, looking at a draft this year with 6 quarterbacks taken in the top 12. Which do you think is most likely to bust, Pete?
Can we talk about the quarterbacks a little bit? So we got
So Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Michael Penix, JJ McCarthy, Bo Nix, aka Throw Picks.
I think McCarthy. And I personally wouldn't even consider it a bust.
I think we had similar feelings about McCarthy. The thing that gets me about McCarthy, and it's someone pretty much every year now with how happy we are to take quarterbacks, is what I always want to see these guys and where they're slated in mock drafts after, like, as the season has ended. But these guys whose stocks rise big time after the games are done playing is a major red flag to me.
Yeah.
The biggest of all time was Zach Wilson.
Yeah.
Wilson was obviously, a good player and had, like, it was a first round grade, but all of a sudden he throws for 60-yard passes at his pro day, and he's the number 2 pick in the draft.
Yeah.
And it's like, there was probably some people thinking like, Trevor Lawrence or Zach Wilson. And we never should have been thinking that. Trevor Lawrence was the guy for 2 full seasons. Like, teams would tank 2 years in advance to get this guy.
And not to be a prisoner of the moment, but what's become of Trevor Lawrence now?
It's a great question. We kind of talked about it in the first segment. Like, hasn't panned out.
No.
And you know who's picked right after Zach Wilson? Trey Lance. So it's like it feels like we're reaching more than ever before. And McCarthy was one of those guys who, his stock just went up and up and up after the games were played. Oh, you know what? Now that I noticed that Michigan won the national championship, I noticed he's a pretty accurate thrower. It's like, yeah, we knew that. But he was not anything special with his arm, and his offenses were not prolific in any way, and they did not open up a playbook for this guy. They were as, I don't want to say draconian, but like as old school offense as you get for a team that's playing at that level, a national championship level.
Yeah.
And and all of a sudden he's a first round pick. Teams should be trying to get him in the top 10.
I don't look.
Well, the
I
Patriots
can tell
look
you,
at him at 3.
I can tell you from my experience when I used to work for Football Scouts Inc., which was like the scouting service. We also worked for this agent at SFX Sports, and part of the agency was Gary Horton was this guy. He was an NFL scout. He worked in college for years as a recruiting coordinator at Arizona State and Illinois. And Hort was just amazing with people. And he could recruit. He could sit in a living room and get, like, let's say Peter Warwick, or before him, Kevin Hardy to sign with SFX. And the key was Hort would train you for the draft. And he'd take you to Arizona and he'd teach you everything about the combine. And this was new at the time. It was considered ahead of the curve. So Horton's big story was he got Kevin Hardy, I think, taken like 2nd or 3rd in the draft. And he took him from like a 3rd round pick or a 2nd round pick to, so you made the guy tens of millions of dollars, even back then in the late 90s. And that's what it used to, and even that was bogus, right? Like Mike Mamula, being an Eagles fan, he rose up.
Oh.
He was just this Hulk. He mastered the combine. And now I don't know what these guys do in the offseason or after football to have their stocks rise. It's almost now it's based on nothing.
Yes,
because
and
nobody's
I
running.
think the combine might hurt more than it helps.
I think so too.
Overall, I don't know the numbers of it, but we have so many stories of those guys. I'll give you one that we talked about a little bit earlier that's close to my heart. Tyquan Thornton, Baylor.
Yeah.
Crushes it, runs the best 40 time at the combine. And the Patriots trade up to get him in the 2nd round. And he's done nothing. And I actually thought he was a good receiver out of college, unlike some of those Bryles guys that didn't have the route trees. Like, we knew Thornton was a burner. We already knew that. But then he has the best 40 at the draft, and you're trading up to get him, and 3 picks later, Pittsburgh picks George Pickens. And you lose.
Who was the guy that was taken by the Jets out of Baylor, wide receiver?
Denzel Mims.
Yeah.
Who I thought was going to be a real good,
So
a good pro.
He made like big catches for Baylor. Like he would
Yeah.
get jump balls. He would take him
tested
down.
guy.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was tough.
Big, long frame. Anyway, we gotta get out of here.
All right.
So JJ McCarthy's going to be the one. That goes in stark
Yeah.
contrast. Scotty thinks Michael Penix is going to be Patrick Mahomes. He said it. He said it on here. He said Mahomes, Brady, Penix.
Scotty.
I said the situations were comparable, and Penix was a better comp to Mahomes than Caleb Williams.
It's fair enough.
See. Anyway, Scotty, Pete, catch Pete at 1:00 on the Pete Souza Show YouTube, live every day, just like we are here at high noon Eastern time, 11 a.m. Central time. We'll have it for you. Who is the second best rookie quarterback in the league? We'll find out on Sunday, and we'll have it for you on the Cam Show on Monday. We'll see you.